This is Kate. I'm the moderator.
This meeting is being recorded.
Very lovely. So I'm Kate. I'm talking to you from Berlin. I'm representing my 4 team member here for the Hertie Asian Network. So just a little bit background introduction about the Hertie Asian Network is a Hertie School student and alumni-led initiative. So we aim to bring together collective experience and expertise in both public and private sectors across Asia. Like, to be honest, the 4 of us, we have 2 EMPA program alumni and 2 current students from the same program. The 4 people come from India, China, and Singapore. So the primary idea to establish this network, that started from our primary experiences starting, working, and living in Germany and the EU. Based on that, we truly see the demand and necessity to bridge and synthesize and to collaborate. And we're aiming to accelerate a more sustainable and long-lasting impact through our small but firm initiative. And then as the first launching event, we chose the topic digital community related, because that's definitely something in need given the current time of pandemic. And we see it's transboundary and cross different geographic boundaries. That's also like why we're lucky to have such an international panel today, dialing from France, from China, from Singapore, but then based in India. And then we also see that actually digital solution is to some extent very scalable and applicable to some other contents. So today specifically, we're going to hear about 2 cases on education technology. One case is about South Africa and the other case is about India. And originally, we're going to present 2 cases on info aid and humanitarian relief from India and China. But unfortunately, the speaker from India, Sahia, he won't be able to join us. He is giving us a very short notice because of the random meeting, but with a senior Indian official. So unfortunately, he won't be joining us to make his presentation as a speaker, but then let's hope that he can dial in later and maybe casually chat with us, or if that can't be the case, we can share his contact info and materials to the audiences afterwards. Sorry for that. We have Eilean from Germany right now, sit in France to talk about the future teacher kit. And we have Jai, he's founding, and Eilean is the policy advisor and policy lead of GIZ for reference. And then we have Jairaj, he's founder and managing director of CG, an Indian social impact enterprise, to talk about blended and assisted learning in India. And then we have Dr. Shiling. She's coming from China. She's the co-founder of Zhuoming Info Aid, to talk about a few grassroots digital initiatives in China. So without, so he's dialing. Oh, that's cool. So sorry, but so he just make sure that you're here, right? You're with us.
Yeah. But I'm very sorry for this.
Cool. I just finished my sentence that we're missing you, and we're so lucky to have you. So our last speaker will be Sahi, and he's going to talk about the CPC analytics. He's a co-founder, and also he's a very fresh doctorate graduate from our school, Hertie. So without further ado, actually, I will hand over to Eilean to start, please.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So let me start sharing my screen. Brilliant. So thank you for the introduction. So indeed, my name is Eilean von Lautz Cauzanet, and I work at GIZ in the area of education and digitization, and notably on all questions related to teacher training. At GIZ, we have something called the GIZ Innovation Fund. It's a challenge that ask employees every year to come up with innovative ideas that support a special target group. And in the 21st and 22nd year, in the year 22nd was the subject targeting a population who suffered a lot from the pandemic. So my colleagues and me decided that we would like to come up with a solution that would target teachers. So the goal here was really not to only come up with a nice idea, because I think we don't have the time anymore for a nice idea when it comes to teachers. We really need something, a scalable support. So the idea was here to really come up with an innovative solution that would be very quickly scalable. And to do this, we decided from the beginning to have especially one partner on our side who is the core actor in the education and teacher training area, which is UNESCO. So this was in June last year, and we started basically our idea of finding and conceptualizing process by just looking at what the reality is. So we all know that teachers all over the world look for possibilities to acquire new skills, resources, content, and training. And we know that this has been always the case for at least decades, and it's gotten worse since the pandemic. So it's an existing problem that got worse. And we decided that whatever we would develop, it has to be scalable and replicable. So we do not want a solution that where we have to start from scratch in every country, which is very often the case of projects when you look at development aid, how it is constructed. So you have a lot of pilots. And the problem is that you spend a lot of money on doing small pilots, and then you start over again and again and again. And you never come to the point where things are getting scaled. And so to reach that goal, we really envisioned that we would like to tap on a technology that is actually already scaled and with low tech. And by low tech, we understand here mobile phones and messenger systems, which are actually de facto worldwide now the most scaled edtech technology, because are used by millions of teachers worldwide, not only teachers, but especially teachers. So on the left, you can see a teacher in Tanzania using WhatsApp during the pandemic. And exactly, as I said, scalability is a core goal of the solution. But most importantly is that we didn't want to focus only on the training side. We really wanted to have the teacher at the very heart of the solution. So we wanted a solution that adapts to the teacher's lives, which are very, very challenging very often. So besides financial and time constraints, we know that teachers worldwide lack recognition of their work, and that we've been through decades where the accountability approach has damaged a lot the reputation of teachers. But of course, we want a solution that is not only scalable, but also and adaptive, but also effective. Means that in the end, teachers have to learn something. Teachers have to have skills that they didn't have before. So it has to, the solution has to trigger what we call the 4 phases of individual learning, meaning that you from being aware until you put something into practice because you process it fully. So we decided that the solution we would build would basically be composed of 2 components. First, it would, of course, provide teachers with information, content, and training, and stimulate the individual reflection process. So basically a training solution, but it would also be embedded in a collaborative approach, in a collaborative community of practice. Because we know today is that resilience really resides on collaboration. System resilience resides on networks that are strong enough to take people through crises. And we know that teachers evolve best in communities where they support each other. And we know that that's a way how teachers can actually support and innovate. And earlier I said that for us it was really, really important that teachers would be at the core of the solution, and really meaning that from the beginning, from really basically the first moment of sitting together at the desk and coming up with an idea, we said we want teachers to actually tell us what they need, because that's also something in the area of development work has been done in a wrong way for years, that actually you design solutions for users and then you present it to the user, and it's not necessarily what they need. And especially in edtech, it's a huge problem. So we decided to really include them through a co-design process from the beginning, and we did that through multiple surveys, focus group workshops, design thinking workshop, and actually also a whole test phase where teachers during a full month tested the first module. Yeah, so I hope you can still hear me. I just heard me twice. And our goal, and which we reached, was to develop the minimal viable product by February this year. We learned through this testing phase and pilot phase that really what is the most important for teachers is something very global, in the sense that we also talk to teachers in not only the Caribbean, but also in African countries, and they all share the same needs. So they really need to acquire skills in the area of ICT, digital skills, but there's also the need to actually feel supported and acquire methods how to develop their personal growth, actually. And of course, a traditional problem, so to say, which is sad to say, but it's one of the biggest, is classroom pedagogies. And by classroom pedagogies, it's meant now that you have offline classrooms, you have online classrooms, and sometimes you have both. So teachers are now in a fully new role, as a learning facilitator, so to say, and they feel lost, and they have to be prepared for that role. And most important is that we really learned that teachers really appreciated the learning mode, which in that case was WhatsApp. Every content and training and whole collaboration among teachers were facilitated by WhatsApp. And so just a few words before then I show video. We had, well, in the co-design phase, over 1,500 teachers from the Caribbean region, and in the end, 268 Jamaican teachers participating in the program, so testing the pilot. And you really have to imagine that concretely what happened, that we used the platform sending out training snippets on their phone. So they received a PDF, including links, resources, offline resources, online resources, and they received a call for an activity to implement in the classroom. And in parallel to that kind of assignment, how to say, which we call challenge, they were part of small WhatsApp groups in which they could exchange on what they were learning, supporting each other, clarifying sometimes things they didn't understand. And most importantly, the whole communication, so the way we wrote to them basically was extremely supportive in a positive psychological way. So also with a lot of emojis, a fun way of talking. So in the end, teachers actually said it didn't felt like a training. It was like they were suddenly of a community that was super supportive. And this is a very important point, because it means that we really were able to trigger them intrinsically, because there was no reward. They were doing all this because they really wanted to, but there was no financial reward. They had to pay their own data. There was no certificate at the end. So it was a really good way to test intrinsic motivation, and the way we communicated was super important here. Yes, actually, that's a slide I would like to show, and before, well, I can show it now. I want to show it after the video, but maybe it's easier like that. So the last point of what I was saying, being super supportive, it triggers one point that you see on number 7 here about empowerment, and which is it's a crucial factor when it comes to teacher training. And overall, what I really love about the slide is that it really shows the beauty of low tech and how the future teacher could actually tick all boxes, or it's our goal that it ticks all boxes. So we really are convinced that what the crisis has shown is that low tech has the power to really make a change for teachers, because it's already in the hands of teachers. They already use it. It's cheap. They know the tech. They don't have to be introduced to something new. And just underlining it, teachers do not have the time to be introduced to new tech. It's just not compatible with their lives. So using that approach, the low-tech approach, has a huge potential. And exactly this empowerment and connectedness approach is super important because, as I said earlier, it triggers something that is really, really crucial. It's intrinsic motivation, because teachers worldwide need to be trained. We all agree on that. The thing is, you cannot force people to train. You have to give them really the willingness and the kind of the love to be trained, to access information. Even sometimes you want to, but you lack time. So how if you empower people, if they give them the tool that allows them to connect with peers and give them the feeling that they can grow together, then that's a way that teachers and people in general, basically, because it's a human aspect, will be willing to do the effort and train themselves. And this is a very important point because a lot of education systems have not understand that. So it's not about forcing teachers, it's something you can't do. And the same way, it's not realistic. So you really have to support them, empower them. So I know that it may sound a bit abstract, like a bit theoretical. So I think the best would be that I show now the video where you can find an extract from our pilot. I hope everything works. If not, Kate, could you also share the link in the chat?
Sure, will do.
Great, and I play it now. When the pandemic started, we had to shift. We had to make a change. And so we had to move from face-to-face teaching to online learning. For us, it was difficult. There is never enough time. There is never enough time to garner skills, but you have to be creative and you have to manage your time adequately. And so most of us are doing that. And I try my best.
Colleen is not alone. Already prior to the pandemic, teachers lacked training opportunities, and today, millions of teachers worldwide need to be trained in fundamental 21st century skills, despite their busy schedules. We've made it our mission to create a large-scale solution to this global challenge, and have just successfully delivered our first pilot to 238 teachers.
Eilean, can you
Let's
try
take a
to
look
full screen
at
the
how
video?
works.
Sorry.
This training approach taps into the potential of phones and messenger systems that teachers already use, which are time efficient, easy, and low tech. With this approach, the kid can send out hands-on learning snippets that can adapt flexibly to their schedules, be implemented right away, and make a huge impact. The kit equips teachers with new competencies on the go and at a consistent pace. It also motivates and supports teachers consistently by providing access to collaborative peer groups, online meetups, and knowledge exchange opportunities. We've actually tested and co-designed it with over 1,500 teachers. Being part of the training module motivated 98.9% of the teachers to try out new practices. 97.7% of the teachers reported immediate positive impact after applying our hands-on module in digital classes. The Future Teacher Kit is the low-tech, high-impact solution for collaborative teacher training at a global scale.
My lessons are now more creative. I have access to quite a number of resources. It will help to change my day-to-day life.
Well, thank you so much. So just a few words to the next steps. What we scale up the solution now in Botswana, where we'll train all, reach and train all TVET teachers of the country, which are like 1,200 approximately, and also plan the scale up of the solution in the Caribbean region where we piloted together with UNESCO always, of course, and hopefully in Kenya, Lesotho as well. So we really believe that this huge demand for low-tech solutions is just the beginning, and actually one of the key lessons learned from the crisis, that low-tech is to be used to be. Thank you.
Lovely. And we can definitely discuss a bit more later, but now we would pass over to Jairaj to talk about also education tech case in India.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Thanks, Eilean. I think that was a good start for us to nexus into what we were doing in India while you were building this in South America. So I was very surprised when Sandeep reached out to me and said that there's someone else doing it in the other part of the country. So a brief background about ConveGenius. We are on a mission to build a platform that could scale and disrupt education technology for billions of users. So when the pandemic happened, before the pandemic, we were a program which was essentially personalized and adaptive learning in schools. We were roughly in 1,200 schools in India, with 500,000 users using it inside the school environment. So when the school got shut, right, so it was a point of us to kind of go back to the drawing board and think what and how could we reach to our customers. Now in India, almost internet penetration is today at about 550 million students, 550 million families, which is essentially the way to reach students because it's one device per family. There are about 970 million smartphones in India, right? There's still about 50% of smartphone devices having internet. But access to quality education while schools were shut was completely out, because while the private schools, which is roughly about 20 to 30 million students out of the 265 million students in the K-12 market, did have access to live classes, that everyone else was just sitting at home and not doing any education. Imagine for 24 months, if there was no education, right? The kind of learning losses that would accumulate. So that kind of led us to kind of think about building a solution where we would cannibalize on our personalized and adaptive learning tech stack and build something which could reach every household through a smartphone device. And that's when we thought that, it's just two more action points in terms of getting someone to download an app or get to a website or log in, right? Everyone has smartphones. Everyone who has smartphones has a WhatsApp or a messenger. That's the basic requirement on any smartphone device. That's something even my grandmother is doing, right? So if we were to get the power to teach and learn on WhatsApp, on the basic messaging, that's when you can disrupt and you can scale. So we decided to write a business API which would talk to the WhatsApp's business API and would act as like a chatbot, which could act like a teacher, right? So the idea was that since you are not able to have live classes, you as a child would just ping, say hi, and start learning. Like you're chatting to a teacher and the teacher is able to send you personalized information. So this started as an experiment in one of the states. It was a small state, a hilly state in India, which had 800,000 students. It's the state of Himachal Pradesh. And the day we launched this, the business API crashed because we didn't expect 100,000 users concurrently learning on the platform, because children were sharing it on WhatsApp groups. It was going viral, right? On family groups, etc. So that was the starting point to what we call our story, which is EdTech for Naya Bharat. Naya Bharat means the new India. It's the new digital India. It's the new internet customer. So pre-pandemic, there were X number of users, and post-pandemic, there are the Y users, the ones who have come after the pandemic because of the digital transformation with which COVID has brought about. We define them as Naya Bharat. So today, through our WhatsApp and messenger-based learning solutions, we have launched our own chat-based platform today. We reached out to 35 million users during the pandemic in the last 24 months, and we are getting a monthly active learning user of about 10 million. That's where we are today, and the aim is to get to 100 million in India alone. So how did we do that, right? So what we call it is blended and assisted learning. We imagine conversational AI, conversations, chat messaging as much more beyond just text messaging. It could be also a point of opening up a web view, but the idea of message to message created an asynchronous based learning environment, which meant that you could use WhatsApp or a conversational AI platform to create multiple users using the same device. which means the same family might have 2 kids or also a neighbor's kid, but they should be able to create a profile and start learning. So we started with the basic fundamental of providing weekly practice and assessments based on the practice questions, which meant that whatever you do on the practice, we detect that this is a small issue you have, and based on that, we recommend videos, which could be free YouTube videos, which have been already tagged adaptively. So it personalizes and adapts to your issues and your weak points. Now, how do we align these weekly practice questions? We partnered with the state governments of India, and they were running a monthly calendar that this was supposed to be done on this particular part of the month. These were the learning outcomes that were required. So we aligned our weekly modules according to that. And based on that, every week, children came to our platform, came to our WhatsApp bots, and they pinged hi, and they started learning. So it created a change of habit, right? It was easy, simple, and just like a chat experience, right? You're chatting with a friend. So at the same time, we realized that, this is scaling, this is crossing millions of users, right? In a matter of months, we crossed 5 million users. So then we decided to partner with various content partners who were relevant in India, like Khan Academy, you know a few of the names. And we started tagging this content with our personalized and adaptive learning logic, which meant that when we detect that a child is weak in a certain area and has certain misconceptions and common errors, we could push that particular learning video through WhatsApp as part of the conversational journey. So this started going beyond just practice and going into learning, right? Personalized and adaptive learning. So, and it also opened up a large digital distribution medium where low tech, which Eilean was saying, also mentioning, that low tech could be the digital highways for tomorrow. So then we also started getting data about what are those content which is actually leading to learning outcomes, because we were getting data, big data, and millions of users every week. So we were able to create digital content libraries which were data backed, right? And we were able to understand that this content fits here better than here, right? So this was data backed, personalized and adaptive learning, which started happening because of users using it over a period of time. But again, what is the nexus between what we were doing and what Eilean was doing is, I think, the fact that it is an asynchronous tech, meaning you have a chat bot, you can ping at any point of time, right? In the week, you just say hi whenever you get your parents' phone and start receiving messages from where you left. It continues the conversation from where you left last week or the previous day. And then it is very low tech. It does not require the 5Gs and 4Gs. You can use a basic 2G connectivity. So it essentially fits into any smartphone device with basic internet penetration and connectivity. And then the third is that you can design any experience, whether it's homework, remediation, assessments, or live class, on the same conversational logic. So you don't need to download an app. You just save a contact card of the bot and you can start learning. So it was essentially that kind of helped us scale on the children's side. But then we realized that with all of this data of the children and them learning regularly, there is a requirement to connect the teacher on the other end. So while we were able to provide weekly assessments and learning modules through the children-based bots, we wanted to kind of reflect that data onto the teacher's side. So then we started creating teacher bots, where teachers could just come onto these bots, register their student and their school IDs, and then they could access student data of what their children are doing. So this started closing the loop, right? While the children are learning through our platform on a weekly basis, teachers started getting reports, and that kind of started creating the nudges on the various WhatsApp groups where the children and teacher were already connected. That, you're weak in fractions, why don't you you focus on this today, right? So that is how AI was kind of bridging the gaps through understanding what the performance and misconceptions and common errors exist in the performance of an individual child. This automatically created an asset which would exist post the pandemic, even after the pandemic, because you are automating a certain process which is not existent even in the school environment before. So apart from this, the other activities that kind of started happening was based on the kind of data that we were generating. We started creating data-driven teacher and admin training, solution integrations, and rewards and recognition. Some layer of gamification based on the data that this district, this particular kind of schools require this level of support. So all of this remotely, right? Because we were getting data from the child. So change management and capacity building from digital transformation started happening in a place like India at a mass level, because otherwise it's the whole process of having pilots and having the government to scale it. Right? This was happening in a direct to consumer manner, direct to consumer first. So today we are partnered with almost 14 states in the country, and we have been able to scale this model of WhatsApp, and now beyond WhatsApp, we have launched our own conversational AI platform where it's providing for certain features which WhatsApp does not provide, but also kind of maintains the same conversational AI simplicity and logic. And with this, we are planning to kind of take this to 100 million students in India and scale in Southeast Asia regions and maybe globally across. So what we believe is, I think low tech, again, can potentially be a platform to scale to billions of children and can provide free education, access to quality education for all. Happy to kind of partner and chat about the various initiatives that we are doing. And thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Again, a very interesting solution. And I might ask a bit more about like what specifically happened or maybe impacted during the pandemic later.
Sure.
Then before
so one
that,
part I think I didn't stress much about is the M&E frameworks that we had generated, Kate. For example, all the data that we were generating, we gave it back to the states in the format of API, and the states were able to create nice real visualizations on this data. For example, this is Maharashtra, the western state of India. You can see 1 million students have participated, which is about 44,000 schools. You can drill the data down from district level to block level to school level to grade level, and also create report cards, right, using our data, and analyze which student is weak where. So this kind of creates a systemic level change because the data goes back to the public ecosystem, the states. So and that also led us to kind of create a change in terms of reporting and impact evaluation. Right now, impact evaluation also got disrupted in the format that reports could be generated remotely and without the requirement of actually surveyors going and testing, right? Because we could add evaluative assessments in between the formative assessments that we were already doing. So a lot of use cases started getting extended beyond the basic learning and assessment-based bots that we had created.
Yeah, I truly agree. I mean, it's always amazing to see evidence-based initiatives, right? But then, like, before we dig deeper, we kind of shift our focus a little bit to a broader population, the citizen, during the pandemic. And then I would like to invite Shiling right now to talk about the happenings in China.
Okay, yeah. So let me share my screen. And so good evening or good afternoon, or I don't know, good morning perhaps. Yeah, there. So thank you, Kate, again, and her two colleagues. Yes, I do have a strong feeling that I will be talking something very different. Or at least some very different forms of digital initiatives than the speakers before me. And the context would be emergencies. And emergencies always activate great energies in a society, and digital community initiatives among one of the forms. So the very first scene is, let's date back to the very beginning of the pandemic. This is a difficult memory, but in short, back in January 2020, the early days of the COVID outbreak in Wuhan, healthcare resources were rapidly and excessively overstretched. Hospitals never saw a more crowded scene, and still many people are outside. And this was not unfamiliar in many countries later. So medical care was then recognized as the immediately a need of top priority. And actually, there were many mutual aid action then in the field and also on the internet. I know that Kate and Kate has led a research on 6 or 7 of digital response initiatives in the first outbreak. And there were many more. People were simply eager to do something. So as one of the actions, the people close to me, including partners and friends, initiative and an operational network, later we name it NCP Relief, NCP for novel coronavirus pneumonia. This is the name before COVID-19. So we were responding to the top priority need, as we saw. We call for physicians, doctors, social or psychosocial workers and other people of relevant background all over the country together and support them. The many patients unable to enter hospitals in Wuhan to ease their pain, to ease their anxiety or their family members' pain. All the services were completed online. Not all. We also rely on some of the very brave volunteer drivers to transport patients in very urgent cases to the hospital. And so at last, in around 40 days, this NCP Relief Network served over 5,000 people with medical need of different urgency levels, including around 2,000 pregnant women. Some of them become new mother during the lockdown, during the first lockdown. So one particular thing that I would emphasize is that differs the NCP network from other online medical consultation service was its structure. The founder group, half of them are qualified doctors, decided to build an online hospital. So a hospital means there were procedures, systems, even hierarchies. I show here a chart showing the steps of service. So virtually, we have physicians and paperworking assistants. And all these systems and procedures enable appropriate medical response to individual cases as possible. The group took a week to build such a structure, a very hard week. Then the positive effect emerged. For one thing, the physicians, pro bono physicians took no time to fit in the procedures because it was no different from their actual workplace. Then also the structure allowed physicians from various disciplines to discuss on one single case, which is also just as in a real hospital and not often seen in regular or commercial online medical service. Then in urgent cases, which were not rare, where the patient must be immediately transferred into a real hospital, this was, the doctors online would make telephone calls to the first 8 doctors in field. The doctors talking to doctors, they simply know how to describe the key symptoms to fight for better chances for their patients. So what is different from a real hospital was that online psychosocial activity fit in from the very beginning. I myself was in the information management support team, for I am neither medical nor psychological. But later the network extends some activities based on a very professional team, say health communication on social media and assessments of hospital oxygen needs to support some donor decisions. But through the 2 years of pandemic, we see, at least in China, needs in an outbreak and lockdown change. So medical access in some cases were still a problem, but seldom of the same size and urgency as in the first outbreak. And on the other hand, the real threatening one would be more of logistics, supply chain management, human resource to replace the regular system, and so on. So since last year, when NCP Relief has to launch, while it still offers medical support, it usually takes on more of a community support role. This then strengthens links to the standing donor organizations and relief organizations in the country and force us, I should say, deeper into the dynamics or the texture of different communities and cities. Then this involvement curiously linked the NCP Relief to the experience of a registered social organization, which I am a co-founder, Zhuoming Info 8. And the initiative and the organization actually share the same core group, acting in different contexts. Zhuoming Info 8 in its, we have 10 years and over 100 times of disaster responses, is now maintaining a core pro bono technical group and a tiny administration team, and its emergency actions much rely on massive online volunteers all over the country, even all over the world. We partner with most disaster responders in the country, support them with information to decide better. One of the things we do is to conduct remote community needs assessments to make the villages affected by the disaster more visible or better placed in an overview post-disaster, and then link them to the rescue and relief actors. So this experience in disaster then feed the NCP Relief recent actions in COVID outbreaks, while the NCP Relief experience feed the disaster response action with, let me say, deeper knowledge of communities. Also, apart from our own actions, we also observe that somehow inspired or fueled by the massive digital actions in the pandemic since 2020, we see so many digital emergency initiatives, almost in every disaster and COVID outbreak. I should say almost in every visible ones, but there are indeed many. And clearly they are well received by the society as a justified way of mutual aid action. Most of them, not all, but most of them are technical simple. They operate in our WeChat groups, rely on social media sources, using online crowdsourcing documents to form their information products. One of the most popular form, as I show here in the right above picture, easily replicable, is called life-saving documents, as here shows. So clearly everyone sees information is always in chaos, in a crisis. And on internet, we can do something. So people do something. And one thing is particularly interesting to me is that such initiatives, in specific, the life-saving documents, collecting, which collects individual calling help information on social media, gathered together by the crowdsourcers, volunteers online, is valued and much encouraged by the youth league and then by the universities. So somehow they have a new justified or officialized identity. But also from my observation, there would always be the same question following creating the documents or the information gathering efforts. What then? Just what afterwards? After circulating the information, the needs of particular families and individuals who are to address the needs, there's uncertainty. Then do the social media information present all? Well, we all know, no. There are some digitally illiterate people. In fact, there are many, so many such people who cannot voice on Weibo, WeChat, or TikTok. And almost every such emergency digital initiatives in recent years in China will face these questions after they are passionately created. Broadly, I would say they do raise visibility and awareness of the people in need. And we can also refer to such information chart or documents to analyze geographical zones of needs. But we also see only a few of them would effectively, directly extend to actual aid. So at last, here I will present a few discussion, only research-wise, and still it's quite easy to raise questions, and they are common questions. For example, we may ask, in these emergency digital initiatives, who are the users and who contributes information in the product? And whom and where may these initiatives or may these products reach? Or behind this question, there would be a hidden question that whom and where may they not reach? So also regarding effectiveness, we may ask, do they translate information into action and aid? Or such massive circulation of information platform, do they improve, or to what degrees do they improve efficiency and effectiveness of aid? Or some may ask, do they create certain extent of chaos? So that leads us to think about coordination. So what would be such digital initiatives' role in addressing needs by various multiple actors in any response? Also, then should such quite grassroots initiatives evolve to adapt into the formal structure? I simply place my questions here, and these are my thoughts. Still, it's easy to raise questions, never easy to take actions. But I believe we will always be among the digital actors in emergencies. So yeah, that's all. Back to you, Kate.
Thank you so much for the sharing. I mean, I definitely see it's something, I won't say unheard, but definitely less heard about China, about COVID, and about this type of grassroots-based initiative. We can discuss a bit more later, and we're welcome questions from the audiences. Before we go to the panel, I would like take a few minutes, briefly talk about Sahia and his CPC analytics. Even if he won't be able to join us, he's already dropped off the line because of his meeting. So actually, Sahia's case came to my mind because I saw a tweet on Twitter, April 2021. I'm kind of trying to date back to my own Twitter account. It's exactly because I've been tracing Shiling's case, and I have some idea about info-aid database analytics. And then I saw one tweet from our Hurley school saying that we have MPP alumni and PhD researchers that he's at that time he was based in India and they encountered the most severe outbreak of COVID in India, and we're working jointly with the local community and with local government to obtain and distribute oxygen in local hospitals. And the CPC analytics from their website, it's saying that throughout 2021, they have the chance to be part of two startup team to bring exciting new initiatives to life, which both serve the purpose of improving public health intelligence in pandemics. One of them at the local level and one of them at the global scale. So I definitely can't say anything beyond that I can read on behalf of him, but then later I would share his Twitter account and then the company's website, and in case like any of the audiences or from the panel has have interest to know more, then definitely you can see it or maybe reach out to him directly. So go back to the panel. So as planned, we're going to have roughly 20-minute panel discussion, and we have another 10 minutes for Q&A. So to start the panel discussion, actually we discussed about, it's kind of very interesting that we're talking about the practices in a very kind of zoom in mode, look at what's happening during the pandemic, or like some of the cases actually are prepared before the pandemic. So we wonder if we take into a lens of time, so what happened before and during and after pandemic, like specifically, I'm kind of understanding Eilean's solution is a specific response to the pandemic, right? And then Shiling's institute actually is an established institute, but then it's kind of taking initiative with some other volunteers that's totally unknown before during the pandemic. And to Jairaj, like we mentioned a little bit just now, so as an established solution, and it's already quite solid solution. So what specifically during the pandemic, or maybe you're looking forward post-pandemic? Basically, why and how?
Sorry, muted. Basically, if I rephrase the question, your question is focusing on really on the difference from the pre and post-pandemic about our solution?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand that the three solutions or three cases here are slightly different, right? If I understand correctly, that your solution is some kind of specific response to the crisis during pandemic. But then do you have like any thoughts before that, or why, or is that like just grant-based or whatsoever? Like a little bit of backstage story will be welcome.
Yes, actually it is and it is not, because personally my background is also, I was at UNESCO before. I did my PhD on mobile solutions and teacher training, and this was before the pandemic. And already at that stage the conclusion was, if you want to reach a large amount of teachers and provide them with content, resources, and any type of support, the only way to do that quickly and massively, and already before the pandemic, were mobile phones. It was a bit before the boom of WhatsApp, but we could already see that one coming. And WhatsApp didn't actually replace SMS or calls. It's just the third pillar now, which means we have even more possibilities than we have before. So the background story is basically that when the pandemic hit, it proved that well, we kind of failed. When I mean especially education system and the development world, because we've been talking about mobile technology, edtech, the potential for 15 years. And when the pandemic hit, nobody was able to help education system in a scaled manner. We were lucky to have initiatives like Jairaj ones here and there, and people who start moving, but we could have prevented that. So I guess if there's one lesson is that the things we suggest to do now on a system-wide level and on a scaled level is something we should have done before. And when the next crisis comes, and it will come because crises are cyclic, be it an endemic or whatever, we will not again say, oh, what can we learn from the crisis? Because actually we could have been ready for that one. So basically, yes and no. It's a response, definitely, because we had to respond, and more than ever teachers needed support. but they were already, it was a really dramatic situation for teachers worldwide. Just in terms of figures, there are over 68 million of teachers who should be trained now, because actually without that, children are not learning nothing, and that's the society of tomorrow. So it's a yes and no answer, so to say.
Lovely. Jairaj, you want to take over that?
Yeah, I would start with what vision we had put together for ConveGenius before the pandemic. I remember that our 2025 mission was to get to 30 million students and provide them access to quality education, because the way we were scaling is via the schools, right? We were going school by school, integrating our software services inside the school. And the problems that we would face is that schools might not have infrastructure, right? Some of the schools did have computer labs, some did not. And if they did not have computer labs, we had to go and find funding from corporates or philanthropic organizations to install those computer labs or tablets, right? To enable at least a way for children to consume learning. What happened actually with the pandemic was the world opened up to the fact that yes, learning is possible on the mobile device, right? So that mindset change, right? That mass market India, where mobile was primarily used for just communication, phone call, messages, just opening up the mind and kind of democratizing this whole idea that education is possible through a chatbot or through AI was possible because of the pandemic, because it was a situation that there was no other choice, where the system, the foundations, the districts, everyone were dependent on technology, and technology was kind of pushed onto the ecosystem, right? And once they started using it, they saw incremental value of what technology brings, and then there's a whole change in mindset that happens, right? While the pandemic kind of lasted for 24 months, we saw change happening in a span of at least like 5 to 6 months. We started seeing habit change, right? That users came back on the platform, right? No one needed to push it. It was intrinsic motivation of children to keep coming back, keep looking at what new content is available on the boards, right? So the change in behavior happened due to the pandemic. And then you are now thinking, like, you've already reached 30 million users, right? Now, how big can this become? That now there is a way we see for this, for low tech, for conversational AI, to actually scale some of the biggest problems, not just ed tech, right? If you were to look at SDGs, this is the 4th SDG, access to quality education, right? So we also started experimenting with certain bots, which was not just education, right? We created certain bots which was emergency services for COVID healthcare, right? Just out of experiment to see, what happens, to provide an emergency doctor through the chatbot, right? Ask them a few questions, that is this the symptoms, and then you connect it to the local hospital, local doctor on a live video chat on WhatsApp. So for us, for ConveGenius per se, we expanded our vision that yes, access to quality education for 1 billion children is possible, the next billion, but it is also possible for other impact areas, right? By applying low tech, by opening up the thought process that conversations and asynchronous messaging can actually reach those areas, those mobile devices, where infrastructure, quality schools, quality hospitals cannot. So I think I would leave with that thought, right? That this is core, messaging is core, and if we could kind of integrate messaging and impact, I think there is a lot of value there.
Very informative. So I know that Shiling's case might be a little different, but we'd appreciate that you, because I know that in for a, like, basically, as you mentioned before COVID, I believe Zhuoming Info 8 never touched health issue, right? It's kind of Info 8 expertise in terms of crisis and rescue and relief, but then it's definitely something new. And but I kind of like observed that it had certain imprint on the later activities and initiatives that Zhuoming has, or maybe like is still participating. You're muted.
Yeah, I would say the common points would be we always act online. We are always among the digital actions, and then we always evolve following tracing the needs, emergency management perspective. So whether it's more general or multi-sectoral rescue and relief in disaster context, or it's more critical medical care needs in the outbreak. At least, in fact, it was only in the first outbreak. And I would say the instincts of the group would be following the needs, the most acute needs, and try everything to adapt to the needs. I think that would take on that could take on a humanitarian discussion, but also a very grassroots, not very organizational, very organized, how to say, institutionalization level, very low level of institutionalization, very grassroots character. So this brings some administration problems, managing the group, maintaining some stable existence of the core group. But yeah, we still somehow decide on following the needs. And what worries us in the if we can say post-pandemic time would be the pandemic complex situation and dynamics added many uncertainties to the domestically and globally. So let alone climate change there to affect disasters. So we actually are worried about this uncertainty. We are emergency responders, so that's our common worry in the field.
Yeah, very impressive. I catch the word need here, but then I'm kind of also hearing something underneath that it's human-centric, right, or user-centric. So I wonder if user centricity is like one of the focus point, or maybe, I don't know, is that kind of catch your like attentions for both of the two education technology solutions, human centricity, or maybe user centricity.
I would say that, the whole idea of conversational AI is humanizing conversations. The simplicity in which when chatbots respond to you, it's like you're actually chatting with someone else, right? The more and more the technology evolves, while it is low tech in terms of infrastructure, it's actually working because you're actually humanizing the whole aspect of technology, right? And you're creating equity between the technological bot as well as a real human who would be teaching through the medium of conversations. So yes, there is an aspect of humanization and also simplicity in terms of UI UX that decreases cognitive load and creates equity in this whole process. Yes.
Makes sense. And then we actually wonder about another question, is that when you develop or maybe in-store either the solutions in a two education case, or maybe to provide this kind of randomly initiated solutions to the community for Shiling's case. So who's like, what type of stakeholders you have to work with, and can you share a bit about the challenges, or maybe like the excitement, or maybe, yeah, the kind of takeaway from the stakeholder perspective? I know it's a tough one, but then Shiling, do you want to start? Any one of you?
Yes, I can start. Well, for us, when it comes to education, if I just start, when it comes to education, it's a public good. So you, and the idea is that it's, or like, let's say it like this, it's a bad idea to sideline the education system unless you're part of those who have the philosophy that everything should be privatized, which is not the case at GIZ, so of course. So our goal was more to develop something that supports the education system, the public education system. So of course you have to work with them closely from the beginning, which can be definitely challenging as it is with public actors, because they also have their own challenges and another rhythm and timelines. But in our case, we were happy, we were delighted because we could really work with them through UNESCO, who is in close contact with the Ministry of Education, of course. And now for the scale up in Botswana, for example, it's also, of course, everything we do is a step-by-step process with the partners locally, because otherwise there's no ownership. It has to be, in our case, there has to be strong ownership for the solution, because the idea is at some point that they really take over and use it themselves without us. And very concretely, it also means that the teacher training colleges from our side would be involved here, because our goal is that future teachers, not those who are already in place, learn also how to implement those approaches. So it's working, yes, to summarize it, working with the education system stakeholders is crucial, not always easy. But of course, because we talk about WhatsApp here, you also have to think about working with mobile providers. Our goal is to actually have a 0 rating approach for teachers to make sure they don't have to pay for the data that when they use the solution. So you're quickly in a public-private partnership approach, which definitely in the area of EdTech is quite normal and yeah, and a good thing.
Well, let me share some.
Yeah, I know it's a hard one. Thank you.
No. It's, stories in emergencies. Yeah, there's always many more. As in the first outbreak, and also in disasters before and after, we collect community level information and their needs, and we do some analysis of them. And in several difficult cases, we would form a very informal cooperation with the governmental department, simply to share our community data. They are very raw data, but they say something. And in some cases, when we see the policy changes, that would be beyond joy to, yeah. And to see the whole thing would take a change, and a ground change, a decisive change. And also, but there are many small bits of joys. For example, in the Wuhan response, in late February, one of our pro bono physicians who were not working in her hospital because he was very close to delivery of her baby, and in late February she completed the delivery, and that becomes a huge joy of the whole group, you can imagine. And also when we receive some feedback from communities, even from the individuals, you cannot imagine how the community in a village, deep in their needs and in a very emergency case, where they themselves may have never seen, would express their happiness or indeed that's gratitude, but we would not we would not accept it as gratitude, but that's a strong emotion and an exchange of emotion between us, our partner actors, and the community. So many stories. I can tell you later.
Yeah, that's quite insider story and quite authentic perspective, I would say. And then Jairaj?
I can say that, you know, working with communities, we have essentially also worked. I see Sandeep is on the call, right? Sandeep was actually working with a not-for-profit before he joined HERTI, and he enabled, actually, he helped us with one of the states, the state of Telangana, where there was a close partnership with the state itself, which is the state, the public, the system. And then there's the state curriculum board, which is the educational board of the state. And then there are various not-for-profit organizations which work with the state to become ground level influencers, field workers. And then there are partners like us, right, who are technology enablers, right? So essentially, I saw that during the pandemic, all the players and enablers and influencers came together to make this happen, right? It happened very quickly and it happened virtually, which takes a lot of time in a physical world where, you know, we call everyone to one place, but it all happened together, like everyone coming together in a united manner. I think that for us was a big learning. And if we can continue to make this happen in a post-pandemic world, where all of us come towards progress and a progressive action, like the way we did it virtually, right? I think there's a very quick progress we could see using technology.
Lovely. I know that we're kind of approached the end of the conversation, and I know it's extremely late, particularly in Asia. So let's have maybe a few questions both from the registration. I saw that in the chat box. And for those who still with us, thank you very, very much. And just feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. If that's not the case, then probably we can have the questions from registration, can we?
Sure, I have them open. So I think one question is to Eilean. So what are the key skills that teachers are looking for in your experience in the project?
So what the survey showed is that it's really about what we now all call the 21st century skills. So it's about the three main pillars is basically learning skills, life skills, and social skills. So of course there's digital literacy. So how to use digital methods in the classroom in offline settings, but also how to teach in virtual settings, or even in the most challenging approach, and what happens in many classes now, it's in hybrid approaches. But it's also about core skills that actually societies and economies need tomorrow, such as critical thinking, creative thinking, and how a teacher can actually of course, acquire them to then deliver them to teachers. So how you organize a class, which pedagogical methods do you implement so that teachers as students in the end have those skills? For example, collaboration to teamwork approaches. In a lot of African countries, nobody has ever heard about, basically, to be simple, about teamwork, which is super, super important pedagogical method, because nobody has told them. But also about, of course, skills like social and emotional intelligence, so empathy, conflict resolution, how to communicate with different cultures, and also how to communicate offline and online, that it's a different way to actually communicate. We all know that now. So these are the core skills. It's interesting because, of course, they express that in a very rough, broad manner, but it's something that is called the 21st century skills.
Thank you. I have actually three more in the list, but I think a couple of them are already answered in the discussion. But I think this one, I think will be very relevant to Jairaj. So looks like there is a lot of data with ConveGenius now. So what are the plans of using the data? I think you touched upon it by sharing the data with officers, teachers, etc. But what are the plans? What is the potential that you look at?
I'm very keen to know who asked this question though. But yes, so we were generating about 1 billion conversations, resulting in about 1.5 to 2 billion data points every month, right? So one of the plans with which ConveGenius always had was to be able to create a skill fingerprint. So essentially, EdTech, right? The way we have conceptualized conversational AI and the way we conceptualize personalized and adaptive learning, we break down each learning outcome or a learning objective that we would like to teach into very small subatomic particles, which elicit a certain micro skill, and which allows us to understand whether the child has learned something or has certain issues. Essentially it gives us information about how much learning is happening, what's the growth, and where the child is on a learning path. So one of the things which we did during the pandemic was we acquired a company called Grey Matters India, which had a measurement tool which could compare a kid from one part of the country speaking a different language to a kid in another part of the country, right? On a same graph, on a same learning axis. And we used that and we started basically creating something which is called a skill fingerprint of the child. Now with that skill fingerprint, what we really want to do is use this data to be able to provide opportunities to children who don't have opportunities today. Right? If we are able to identify a child who is a genius, right, the data could allow us to kind of go and reach out to that child and give them a scholarship potentially, right? Because we know they've already predicted based on the data that we have that this child is really going to do well and needs the opportunity. If we know a child is actually going to drop out of class before they have actually even reached class 10th, right? We could take corrective actions. We could tell all the necessary stakeholders that this is essentially where your red spots, your alerts are. When also, we could also provide them alternate career paths if we know that this is a group of children, right? Although predictive analytics should not be taken as is because it's at the end of it predictive, but it also allows us to plan and structure and strategy. So essentially what we are doing is kind of using the data to be able to kind of provide a horizontality to what we know and provide them with more value added services, more discovery, more products, again at the option of the parent to opt in or the child to actually opt in, right? We have to be aware of the various data laws of the various countries. Every country is different, and accordingly kind of provide the various services through discovery and search.
Yeah. Actually, I would like to ask many more questions, or maybe even to have like a kind of mutual conversation, because I saw like a lot more things we're discussing here, but then given the time and the time difference, I would say that I have to wrap up here. And I really appreciate all the speakers, particularly those from Asia, joining us from Asia, super late. And I really appreciate the information, the lessons learned, and the takeaways here. That's knowledge always light up our mind. And I would say that because we're talking about COVID, we're talking about like human needs, I personally feel very warm and I would say a little touching that actually those many people are taking care of those many people of the whole community, have them in mind, like thoughts are with them and actions are with them. I think, yeah, with all that, it's kind of the purpose that we try to establish this 30 Asian network. And we wish like many more discussions of this to happen in the future. And like specifically for all of your cases, if you want, maybe we can discuss about maybe a launch talk or something, if we want to expand into more details, or maybe we want like some mutual discussion afterwards. Anyway, let's stay in touch, and thank you all for those audiences still with us, no matter where you are. We appreciate your patience, and we very much enjoy the participation with you. So with that, I would like to say that today we just close with this, and I'm looking forward to many more in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much.
A very, very quick question. So do you want to share your slides to the audience? Actually, we can offer that if you're okay, or if you're willing to like share your slides to the audience, we can send them like massive email to the audiences. Just let us know.
Yep, that's entirely up to you. Don't worry about that if you don't feel comfortable.
No,
Yeah.
no worries. It's not a push. It's just a check. Yeah.
Okay.
We can discuss that afterwards, touch base, and then thank you very, very much again. So I say bye for now, and then looking forward to see you maybe again in the future. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
and thank you. Yeah.